So hello everybody, my name is indeed Anne-Laure Thiolan. I'm the group of leader for AI and analytics at Capgemini. Super happy to be with you today.
Very nice. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Welcome to our webinar, which is called AI for Good, Delivering Governmental AI Strategies. And let me just have a brief introduction word before we give also the floor to first speakers. First of all, we have seen a great interest in this webinar coming from very different parts of the world. So we will see that in a second, but you can already see over 800 registrations. And we constructed it that the way that it's really a generalist approach guided at many countries. So we are extremely happy to see 80 countries, which is quite a lot in this, at the end of the day, small world. While on the right, you see the program and the event that we have planned for you. After an introduction where we will give the floor to international and national strategists from the EU Commission, from the governments in India and Egypt, and to a member of the EU high-level expert group, writing and brainstorming about what could be the ethical guidelines of tomorrow's technology. We will split into breakout rooms. You will see these appearing if you have the latest Zoom version at the bottom. And in these breakout rooms, we will really deep dive into specific topics in 2 rounds. First for 45 minutes, and again with experts and stakeholders from the public services, from the industry, and from the research in the part, the dimension of ethical AI. And here we aligned with guidelines for trustworthy AI that the EU has. And in a second round with the potential of AI for the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And here you see, of course, we don't cover every topic of the SDGs, but we really try to connect with people on the ground, people in research centers, and people from different governments working on these subjects, additionally to our experts. Here you can see in 2 hours 30, we will have more than 52 people talking with very different backgrounds. I'm extremely honored, extremely, and in the light of today's context, to have 4 hospitals to respond to the call, or university hospitals and clinics to respond to the call to present today. We know that this is not the easiest year and week for these actors, and we will have plenty of other participants. What do we want to do here is really to look at how we can approach AI as part of not just a technical dimension, a technological dimension, but also as part of a digital social contract that we want to brainstorm together at the same table. AI is also governmental action. We see that with national strategies, with funds, with investments. It is also values, because basically we talked for the first time about problems that are human problems, like human biases, but in a new channel, which is now the digital channel and the channel of algorithm. And of course, AI impacts our lives in public services in a way that it deals with our citizenship, when we deal with intelligent job matching, for example, or with healthcare. And all that, of course, is here in today's webinar really embraced by the 17 SDGs that we want to explore, because these SDGs, of course, are fighting for more equality, for fundamental rights, and for the way we as a world can approach topics and sensible topics in different contexts. And now, of course, before we deep dive into this digital social contract, the question is also, where do we stand with AI? And here I would like to give the floor to Anne-Laure Thiolan.
So actually, some of us, when we're dealing with artificial intelligence, we love to deal with data. So I thought that we could introduce this session by giving you a bit of data points. So earlier this year, together with our Capgemini Research Institute, we have conducted a market research to get data on the state of AI market and the reality of how much organizations of various sectors had really progressed towards scaling their AI projects beyond proof of concept and pilots. And so before I deep dive actually into the data, if you want to know more about these reports, feel free to flash the QR code that you see top right. So now the data. So we found that actually 2020, on top of being a bit of a special year, was the year where a majority of organizations have at least managed to put some AI projects in production. 53% of them, roughly, are scaling their AI project versus only 36% 2 years ago. But it's still hard to do. Only 13% of certified organizations have managed to truly scale their AI projects in multiple business teams. For example, using machine learning to optimize both procurement and customer service processes, for example. So this is a really good news because it means that finally beyond the hype that we are all reading in the press, there are more and more organizations that are making AI real for people, for customers, for citizens, and so on and so forth. Now that it has become real, what do people feel about AI? So Pierre-Adrien, if you could move to the next slide. Well, what we found in another research we published on ethics and AI, it turns out people trust in AI has also increased despite all that is happening in the world today. It's now 49% overall, up from 30% 2 years ago. And we see that especially in the public sector, 52% of people, not more than half, now trust AI interactions. But you will tell me trust, it's a bit of a wide and subjective notion. So let's take a deeper look on the next slide. What does trust means, and what are the specific expectations that people have when they interact with an organization using AI? So we measured actually 3 types of expectations from left to right. Expectations about explainability, so the fact that the result, the decision, the action that has been taken thanks to AI can be explained. The second one, expectation about accountability, so ownership really when things go wrong. And the third one, expectations about fairness, so the fact that AI solution would be free from bias against either me or other groups. So you see those expectations are quite high, close or more than 70% of people we surveyed had those expectations, varying from one sector to another, and especially in regulated industries such as, for example, banking and financial services. So how have organizations progressed towards these expectations? So on the next slide, well, we see that in the last year, explainability has clearly progressed. This is due to more and more technology features being available to do so. And by the way, 2 years ago, it was less the case. But it's also due to a better awareness that organizations need to communicate in more details why a decision has been made. And you can see that for the other dimensions, such as fairness, transparency, auditability, well, the progress are either non-existent or even worse. For transparency, apparently people feel that organizations are less transparent about their use of AI in their organizations and processes. So maybe a feeling that AI is now everywhere, but we're not exactly sure where. So as you can see, it has now become a reality. It's not in the future anymore, it's in our daily lives. We can see, and we're really super happy about how many people are attending this event today. And we see that more and more people are engaged into making AI a reality and a good reality. And it's good because people have clear expectations on how AI should be used and how they want to interact with organizations using it. So let's maybe deep dive to the next set of content. Let's discuss how we can use AI for good in order to drive the use of this transformation technology for a more positive future. Over to you, Pierre-Adrien.
Yes. And just before we actually deep dive with the experts and with actors working on these subjects every day, we have one last point because during this workshop and in the breakouts, especially as well, we will get your feedback. Anyone? No? We will get your feedback, and we will do that through the survey that you see here. So in a second, Jyoti from the team will share and present the real-time results of the survey. But basically, we want to do a dry run all together on this Mentimeter. you can simply scan the code or go on menti.com and enter the code. And what we want you to say is hi in your local language so that we can see the diversity of this group once again. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Okay, it already starts. Well, I guess that's a good dry run. The next question will get a bit more technical, I promise, but also quite interesting in terms of, yeah. Jyoti, could you just put for a second the QR code again? But in the meantime, I will introduce what's coming next. We had the pleasure and quite on short notice to reach out to specific actors that in the last years, weeks, and months have been working on national or international AI strategies. This is happening in ministries. We see that a lot. For example, we have seen that defense ministries have started to publish their own AI strategy. We see that also sometimes on city level, regional level. But of course, what we see is this, what the people call a global race going on between different countries at a governmental level, as a state level, and sometimes at a supranational or pan-continental level, in order to see how do we best embrace this technology, the promises that it brings, how do we best catalyze the hype that is also around it. And therefore, we reached out to Maikki Sipinen from the EU Commission, AI policy there, officer, Anna Roy from the ICT Ministry in India, and also Golestan Sally Radwan from the Egyptian government. And I would be very honored to give them the floor to, first of all, pitch a bit the essence, the DNA of what the national strategy or international strategy is there, where they are, where they stand right now, and what their experience has been with this experience. Yeah, if you could all three maybe first do a very brief introduction round so that we have your background, that would be awesome. Maybe starting with Anna Roy.
My name is Anna Roy, and I'm Senior Advisor in NITI Aayog, which is the think tank of the Government of India. We were entrusted with the task of preparing the national strategy for AI for the country. And in 2018, we released the strategy. It is there on our website. And so I'm sorry, Piers, should I kind of make my presentation now, or is it just the introduction?
Just briefly, just one sentence while I upload the presentation. Yeah. So that's enough.
Okay.
Right now, perfect. Sally Radwan, maybe.
Thank you, Pierre. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Radwan. I'm the Minister's Advisor for AI here at the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology in Egypt. And much like Anna, my job is to coordinate the development and implementation of Egypt's AI strategy.
Merci beaucoup. And Maikki Sipinen?
Thanks, Pierre. I'm Maikki Sipinen from the European Commission, working on AI policy there, and joined this event to tell you a bit more about what the EU and the Commission are up to in relation to AI. And I'm already quite amazed that there are 300 people from everywhere, so quite looking forward to our discussion today.
Merci beaucoup. And with that, I would start the first round, where basically it is about this essence, this DNA, and the status of this AI national strategy. Then again, yes, with Ms. Anna Roy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Per. So as I said, the National Strategy for AI was released in 2018, and we called it the AI for all. And as all good things happen these days, we hashtagged it. So AI for all, basically, when we coined it in 2018, our idea was that it should be inclusive AI. That is the new technology which really is not promoted for the sake of promoting a technology, a frontier technology, but something which will be used to solve the problems that the country is facing. That is why AI for all. And the goals, priorities, sectors, and major recommendations are also pegged again around this particular philosophy. And the other thing which we kind of proposed was to present India as the AI garage for the world. Because research, if it happens in a country which has the maximum challenges, helps you in developing products, and then you can take these products and deploy them in similar other countries which are facing similar challenges. So we proposed India to be the AI garage for the world. The key recommendations are in 4 brackets. One is to promote the research ecosystem, where you do not only focus on the core research, but also on the applied side, focusing on the skilling. Adoption, we felt, was one of the crucial things, and we felt that government could play the biggest role in this by being the the largest adopter. And last but not the least, ethics. We felt that unless we address ethical issues of AI upfront, the adoption will not really pick up. For research, as I said, not only did we focus on setting up specialized institutes which focuses on core research, but also on applied. In the applied side, we felt a more public-private partnership was really the need of the hour. And for infrastructure, we wanted to democratize infrastructure, not only compute, but also data. We've proposed this cloud-based infrastructure for the entire country, so that there is democratization in the real sense. And of course, moonshot projects. And last but not the least, here also AI for All Alliance amongst the countries, where the countries could collaborate to work on common problems and fund several of these moonshot projects, as well as big projects which affect all the countries alike. Skilling also, both at the for reskilling as well as at the education level, both school education and college education, we felt that with the changing time, design thinking should be more part of the curriculum, and also blended learning should be stressed. Adoption, as I said, is the one of the cornerstones of our strategy, where we pitched government to be one the major adopter of the technology, and thereby providing the market for this technology to develop, to facilitate adoption, large foundational annotated data sets also to be supported. And that is one of the area where NITI Aayog is working on developing cancer data bank, and promoting partnerships and collaborations, which we feel unless we have these collaborations, a pervasive technology like AI cannot really be promoted in our view. And a multi-stakeholder marketplace, which provides the place not to know about the technologies available, and also promotes the research and development. Ethics is one of the pillars of our strategy, and following the release of the strategy, we have been working in this area. We this year released the discussion paper on the principles of ethics, which are to be adopted, and we are shortly going to release another discussion for part 2 of the same discussion paper, which focuses on the enforcement mechanism. Next, please. So in ethics, this is a work in progress, and I would not spend too much of time, but basically what we are talking about, transparency, because we feel that if we are transparent, that really provides, addresses a whole lot of issues. We also feel that data is the crucial thing. So India has come out with a data exchange architecture, which is also there on the website, which NITI Aayog has released. And then on the enforcement side, we are working with all these stakeholders to come out with an enforcement mechanism which is agile, because there needs to be a balance between enforcement and development of the technology. So this is the thinking on which we are going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna Roy. And now I would just give the floor to the European Commission with Maikki Sipinen. You have the floor.
Thanks a lot, here. So I was given a task by the Capgemini colleagues to present the European Commission or EU AI strategy in 2 minutes. So let's see how I can do that. The first thing to say is that the EU AI strategy builds on fundamental EU values and rights. That's the first thing to mention. And I was asked to present to you the DNA of EU AI strategy. So I suppose the DNA model is what you see on this slide, one bigger box with two small ones attached. This is a framework picture coming from the AI white paper that the Commission published in February 2020, so a few months ago. And I will, in a quick moment, tell you more what that includes and what it means. But it's good to understand that AI policy is not something brand new for the Commission. Of course, AI research and action in the European Union has been going on for many, many years. And the AI policy really started in European level in 2018, when then 28 member states created a joint declaration of cooperation on AI and signed it. So to create the vision of Europe working together for AI. And our thinking builds on the understanding that AI is a cornerstone for future prosperity. And we need to guarantee that AI is then also used to benefit society. And for citizens, this can mean, for example, improved health services or public services, or maybe better communications with their loved ones. And for the fight against climate change, we can use AI, for example, to reduce energy use of different systems, or maybe to track deforestation. And I understand that we will get many, many more examples later on today. So moving to the framework, we have two joint ecosystems that together are European approach to AI. First, we have to ensure that EU is at the forefront or at the frontier of developing excellent AI, and that these findings and this development is also taken in use, so that there is uptake of AI systems across European industry and also in the public sector. So this excellence in research and uptake are really the core of the ecosystem of excellence. And how to implement this ecosystem of excellence? Back in 2018, the member states and Commission published together a coordinated plan on AI. And this is a kind of a strategy document that includes around 70 actions to reach the EU's AI goals. They are everything from research to establishing testing and experimentation facilities to creating regional digital innovation hubs to support in AI uptake, increasing public procurement of AI systems, having more AI skills for citizens, and also helping AI startups to grow and flourish. And of course, if we want to have that kind of excellence actions, they need to be underpinned with investment. And the EU's AI investment target is that it would reach 20 billion a year still this decade. And of course, from the recent months, a bit of a new boost will be gotten from the post-COVID EU Next Generation Fund or facility, and there especially the recovery and resilience part of 750 billion, out of which 20% is now earmarked for digital, including AI actions. So that's a quick run through of ecosystem of excellence. But in addition to that, we of course need an ecosystem of trust. We get that AI has great potential, and we need to do all that we can to advance it. But due to AI's unique characteristics, also new types of risks are emerging that we need to manage. So EU will apply, develop, and adopt AI in an ethical, legal, and human-centric way. And that's really the essence of ecosystem of trust. And as well as for the other ecosystem of excellence, this is also not work that has now started in this February. For the past 2 years, EU has had a high-level expert group on AI working, and this expert group has developed and piloted a list of ethical or trustworthy AI principles. And I believe that we have Catelijne a bit later to maybe tell you more about that process. But this work and the principles have inspired the now currently ongoing work that's to create an AI regulation or legislative approach and framework for AI. So these two ecosystems come together to create the EU approach to AI. And next steps are that in Q1 2021, we will publish an AI package that includes this AI regulation, and it's combined with the new edition of the coordinated plan on AI with this action list on how to implement the ecosystem of excellence. So both ecosystems should go hand in hand as well for the next step then early next year. Can I still get the second slide, please? No? Yes, okay. So this is just a bit something to highlight that, of course, us civil servants are not working in the AI strategy or European approach to AI all by ourselves and in the big office buildings or home office, but we are actively asking for feedback and input from outside. And earlier this year, we had a big public consultation on the ideas of the white paper on AI, so on the ecosystems of excellence and trust. And to our nice surprise, more than 1,200 responses were received, which is a great number for such a public consultation. And I realize I don't have too much time, so just a few highlights from there, and you can check online the rest of the results if you are interested. So the respondents were about 85% from EU, but really everywhere from the world, from business, from research centers and NGOs, etc. So 3% found that the current legislation in EU is fully sufficient for this AI era. 33% found that there might be some gaps, and 42% said that there's a need for new AI legislation. And when asked for the main concerns, 90% of the respondents found that AI possibly breaching fundamental rights is a very important or important concern, and 87% were alarmed by potential discriminatory outcomes of AI use. So those are very big percentages and good motivation for our discussions in the latter parts of these workshops. So thanks.
Yes, Thanks a lot, and indeed we will really see how at different levels different initiatives are taken on to implement, operationalize, develop trust, and it will be very interesting also to get the through the survey tool the opinion of the audience, because we will ask between different initiatives like a workshop or bias detection tools or a charter within an organization, what they rank and how they rank it in terms of efficiency and feasibility, etc. Before going into this detail also of the ethical part with Catelijne Muller, I would give the floor now to Golestan Sally Radwan from Egypt.
Thank you, Pierre. And thank you. I just have two very quick slides. I just wanted to introduce you to the rationale, so why Egypt thought about doing an AI strategy in the first place. And really what we're trying to achieve are two things. First, we don't just want to do AI for the sake of doing AI, we want to do AI for a purpose. And the first purpose is really to deploy AI technologies to help achieve Egypt's developmental goals with hopefully a realized benefit for all Egyptians. And the second goal is to establish regional leadership for Egypt, but also position it as an active player in AI worldwide. And maybe if we get to talk about the AI race later on, we'll explain what we mean by regional leadership, because it's not just about being a leader. I think there are many elements to this AI race that we need to talk about. But it's also getting engaged in topics like AI ethics, like governance, like the deployment of AI and equality and fairness and diversity and inclusiveness and all these aspects. But what this translates to is a mission statement that says that we want to create an AI industry in Egypt with everything that an industry requires, be it human capacity, technology, platforms, but also the legal and regulatory framework that enables it to be sustainable. Next slide, please. So the way we think of Egypt's AI strategy is in terms of 4 pillars and 4 enablers. And very briefly, we call them, just to be a little bit cool, AI for G, AI for D, AI for H, as in human capacity building, and AI for X, as in external or international relations. AI for government, or AI for G, is really about exploring ways in which first citizen to government services, but also internal government processes themselves can be made more efficient and more transparent by deploying AI technologies. The second one, AI for development, and here we emphasize development again, because it is to realize Egypt's development goals. So this is applying AI in key strategic sectors. And we've prioritized 5 sectors for the first phase of the strategy, which started last year and is going for the next 3 years. And these are agriculture, which also includes water management, environment, and so on, healthcare, manufacturing, infrastructure, and economic development. And then, of course, we have kind of an enabling technology, which is NLP for Arabic, as kind of a cornerstone for AI for government applications, but also something to enable lots of applications on the cultural heritage side, Egypt being the rich country in culture and heritage as it is. And then, of course, perhaps the most important one is capacity building. And under this, we understand everything from general awareness of the public of what AI is, where its limitations are, separating myth from fact, and so on, all the way to really producing world-class calibers in research or in practice. And that, of course, includes program for schools or school-age children, up to university level, vocational training, but also upskilling existing professionals, both technical and non-technical, all the way up to leaders in government and business, and really preparing them for the age of AI. And then finally, on the international and regional relations side, Egypt is spearheading the work on 2 regional initiatives, one on the African side, one on the Arab side, to really unify efforts on AI, see where we can speak with one voice, but also where we can collaborate on projects that could benefit from economies of scale, like, for example, in agriculture or education. On the international front, we've been very active with the OECD, with UNESCO, now with ITU and other organizations as well. In terms of the enablers, we have, of course, governance, which includes ethics, but also includes tracking and monitoring of the strategy itself. We have data. We have a separate data strategy to enable the AI strategy and the digital transformation in the country. The ecosystem, and especially building bridges between industry and academia and research, but also with the startup ecosystem. And then finally, infrastructure, not only the presence of the infrastructure in terms of networking and storage and so on, but also ensuring access to it for all players from this ecosystem to maximize the benefit of it. So that's just a very quick overview, and happy to dive deeper with the questions. Thank you.
Yes, and basically we have a very nice struggle right now, which is that we have so much content that we are already on timeline challenges. I would, and Anor, please really feel free to edit or amend my question, but we have seen very different approaches, and we also know the different approaches that we see from a Canadian point of view, for example, where there is a lot of focus on research, while other countries will focus on industrial goals, and where again others are very sure about their nature. For example, let's take the Smart Nation program of Singapore. It's just not the same profile, country profile, geopolitical situation as Russia, China, or the US or the EU. And again, the EU is not the same as a single country. So the question that I would have really for if we can succeed by a brief answer is, how do you see this global race? And with that, I would just comment with Macron's word, Emmanuel Macron, who said, we are not on the same race as in France as China, because we don't have the same data civil preferences or data culture, and the same goes for the US. So how do you see this whole debate on the global race? How do you see also your entity, be it a country or an institution or a pan-European or European Union? How do you see it in this geopolitical industry race and industry effort to embrace this new technology and the power of data here? With anyone who wants to go first between you three.
Okay, maybe I can go first, since I started, or no, I was, yeah. I have to say I appreciate this term AI race, because it's a nice way of highlighting that this is a AI development and uptake is something that we have to do very urgently, and we have to put a lot of effort in it. There is no time to wait around or expect it to just advance by itself. But at the same time, it's a good idea also to highlight the cooperation side. At the European Commission, of course, we have 27 member states who are cooperating here. It's one of our key elements of the EU AI strategy, really, to build on these member state synergies and make sure that we don't do the same actions 27 times, and also share best practices. And similarly, on the global level, we cooperate with the OECD, with the GPAI, with UNESCO. I know that with India, there is a good discussion and a joint task force coming along, and maybe we will hear more about the Egyptian approach to AI as well. So a lot of cooperation is going on as well globally, and it's even more is needed. And but if we want to really understand this as a competition or a race, EU is very well placed to be among the winners because of our strong history in AI research and strong industry, etc. But something like that is maybe not quite enough for us. So we are also hoping to be the world leaders in human-centric AI through our ecosystem of trust, and also most recently putting attention into this climate-friendly AI, since our President Ursula von der Leyen communicated in the State of Union speech just last month an increase or improvement in the EU climate target, so the greenhouse gas emission reduction to be 55% by 2030. And of course, AI development is something that can help there as well. So hopefully we can bring this AI race to be also about ethics or about climate, and encourage ourselves and other countries and regions to do the same.
Perfect. Merci. And trying, I see Catelijne already on the screen. We will aim at giving you the floor in 4 minutes. So briefly, Anna Roy, maybe what's your take on the global race competition environment of AI?
I feel, this is one area where collaboration should be more important rather than being the number one. Now, we have seen how China said that N+M1, that is their strategy, that we will be the leaders in the AI race. I really feel that, countries like India, and I heard Egypt also, Sally made that point. I think it's very important for us to underline the need to collaborate, to realize that this is one pervasive technology which is cross-cutting and is in so many sectors and has the potential to really address major problems in sectors like health, education, agriculture. So rather than a race, I would really feel that we need to highlight the collaborative part of it and look at the technology for what it can achieve, and not how many algorithms you get in the market, how many research papers you are bringing in, and that kind of a thing. So that is really my take on it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And yes, Sally Radwan, you have the last word on this question.
Thank you. And Anna has just saved me half of what I was going to say, because I completely agree that it shouldn't be a race. I don't think the term race applies here. This is one domain where cooperation is definitely better than competition. And I always say that AI is very super hyped, and I look forward to the day when it becomes a boring technology that no one really wants to lead in, because that's when we'll start doing AI properly. The metrics are very difficult, and we can't really apply metrics from other kind of races to, as Anna said, whether it's the number of research papers or how quickly we are to adopt AI. The metrics should be: how safe is my AI deployment? How relevant is it to my local context? How reliable, robust, and sustainable is it? And not just whether I'm the first to market. So the coolness and innovation factor are all nice, but it's not really relevant here. And secondly, I also agree with the idea that we're not all in the same race. Priorities are different, local contexts are different, and therefore the metrics should also be different. When we talk about capacity building in Finland, just picking on my Finnish friends here, it's very different from talking about capacity building in Egypt or another country in Africa. So we're not starting from the same starting point, and therefore we cannot be compared on the same scale or along the same metrics. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And with that, I'm very pleased to give the floor to Catelijne Muller, who will elaborate on her role, her experience within the high-level expert group of the European Union, and what's even more interesting, and the timing with our breakout session that will come afterwards, is basically that she will also talk about exactly the kind of subjects that we will be approaching with more of a technical but also a tooling aspect later on with experts and public organizations in the breakout room. So Catelijne, you have the floor, and we try if possible, to keep it in the 8, 9, 10 minutes, that would be superb.
Thank you, Pierre. I will try to make this fast. I just want to follow up on your question about the AI race, and I must say that I fully agree with the last two speakers, Anna Roy and Sally Radwan, that we should not approach this as a race, because there are so many hurdles still to take, that if we lose sight of that, we could be racing in the completely wrong direction. So I'm not in favor of using the word AI race at all. But let me just go to what I was about to say. Since 2017, it's been my mission to ensure that AI lands in society in a responsible manner. Precisely to make sure that it lives up to its promise, that we move in the right direction. I do this in various committees in Europe and through my organization ALLAI, ALLAI. And I was, as you already mentioned, Pierre, a member of the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence to the European Commission, the group that wrote the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. And I'm happy to see that the countries that were just presented all have ethics in their strategies. There is a mention of that this should be approached in an ethical manner in all strategies. So I'm happy to see that. But the question is, why are we doing that? Why is this so important? And what are these ethical guidelines? Well, we've been working on that in the high-level group, and I want to give you an idea of the lenses that we looked through when we develop these ethics guidelines. Because as we hear, AI carries great promise to solve many problems, many global issues, but it also poses the necessary challenges. And while this event is about the ethics of AI, I want to stress that these challenges go beyond ethics as well. AI has a broad and deep impact on all aspects of our lives and on our entire society. And there you need to think of safety, for example, physical safety, societal safety, but also privacy, for example, education, work. It has an impact on our legislation or on our regulation. It has an impact on our democracy. It even has an impact on warfare. And we all know that present-day AI works with large amount of data, and that data is not neutral. That data are not per se facts, and the data can be messy and incomplete and contain bias, which in turn often lead to biased and unfair outcomes of AI decision-making. Whether it's on loan applications or on looking at skin lesions or on predictive policing, there are ample examples of AI leading to a disadvantage for certain groups over others. But the limitations of present-day AI go beyond bias and unfair bias alone. And I want to make that clear because we should not lose sight of the fact that current AI systems are not intelligent in the way that we consider humans intelligent. AI, for example, is unable to establish or understand a causal relationship from between what it perceives and the outcome that it gives. So we've learned that this type of working of AI is called correlation, and this is important to remember. A well-known example of this problem is an AI system that taught itself the difference between a dog and a wolf. And it taught itself to see this by looking at the number of white pixels in a photo. Most of the wolf photos were taken in the snow. So the system had no understanding of what a dog was or what a wolf was, and that they are both mammals and that they have 4 legs, etc. The system only recognized a large number of white pixels and correlated that with the presence of a wolf in a photo. And while this is obviously harmless, there are also examples of unexpected correlations that can be very harmful. For example, when a dermatologist looks at a lesion and thinks it's a tumor, he uses a more sophisticated scanner that has a digital ruler to measure the tumor size. They do this only for lesions that cause concern. So in a series of biopsy images that were taken with this more sophisticated scanner with a digital ruler, the algorithm was more likely to label the tumor as malignant, not because the tumor was indeed malignant, but because the algorithm correlated the presence of a ruler on the scan as an increased risk of malignancy. So the system again had no understanding of the meaning of a tumor or of the meaning of the benign or malignant. Another example is self-driving cars, and I would hope that the object recognition system in a car is able to see the difference between the white sky and a white trailer that stopped in the middle of the road. But it's not only the data and the correlation that can cause biased or incorrect results. The broad development of AI is an accumulation of consciously or otherwise biased decisions and choices, varying from the considered inputs to the set goals. And the latter is important because AI systems, the current ones at least, are goal-oriented. They optimize for a human set goal. We decide what the AI is going to optimize for. And if you take an example of healthcare, it is important to know whether the system optimizes for lower costs and pure efficiency, or for better care, or for both, and how we make the balance between the two. Or is the system perhaps optimized to generate higher profits for, say, a pharmaceutical industry player, because the outcome leads to prescription of certain drugs or certain tests? I think that doctors should know how these systems work and what they optimize for. In addition to that, many current AI systems are black boxes. We know that. They do not explain how and why they come to a certain outcome. The system does not indicate that it looked at the white pixels in the picture instead of at the shape of the nose, for example, of the wolf or the dog. Nor does it tell us that it looked at the ruler in the picture instead of actually looking at the lesion or the tumor. And again, for the dog and the wolf problem, this might not be much of an issue. But what about a system that is deciding whether you are entitled to receive a mortgage or a loan? Wouldn't you want to know why you didn't get it, for example? Was it because of your financial situation? Was it because of your background? Was it because of where you live? Or was it because maybe your behavior on social media? And I must say that in certain situations, we already have a right to an explanation on these decisions. And to give you an example, public institutions have the obligation to be transparent about the decisions they make. So if a government uses AI to determine something that affects a person, the government has a legal obligation to explain the decision that it made. Moving from the quality of AI to its use, because no matter how technically robust the AI system, there is also a question of whether it is responsible and ethical and wise to use a technology. Imagine a perfectly operating facial recognition system. It recognizes faces of all colors and all genders equally, no mistake. Do we want to use that system universally under all circumstances? Or do we want to set boundaries or red lines? And another example that is currently very relevant is personalized news aggregation. This has shown to have the potential to impact elections, to amplify conspiracy theories, and sow division, and thus impact our democracy and our social structures. The system probably works perfectly for the deployer, It keeps us hooked to their platform, helping them to get more ad revenue. But is it really something that is beneficial to our society? I call these more basic questions. So no matter how perfect the technology and how capable the technology, I call this question zero. We should always be able to go back to the question, even if it works perfectly, do we really want to use it? So these questions are all on the technical and ethical level, but AI also has a lot of legal implications. And despite that there are people that say that AI is a completely unregulated technology, this is simply not true. AI does not operate in a lawless society. We have to abide by regulation. Facial recognition, for example, facial recognition is already covered in the GDPR, but it also impacts our privacy. And not just our data privacy, but also our general right to a private life, which is a fundamental right. And I also want to refer not only to the work of the European Commission, but to the important work of the Council of Europe and its commission CAHAI, that is now working on a possible legally binding instrument on AI. And I saw that the president of CAHAI, Gregor Strojin, is also present in one of the breakout sessions to tell you more about it. And I myself also work as an expert for CAHAI. Through all these lenses that I just explained, so the technical, the ethical, and the legal, we at the high-level expert group have approached the development of the EU guidelines for trustworthy AI. And basically, we said trustworthy AI and ethics guidelines should be based on 3 pillars. It should be lawful, so it should be in line with all legal obligations that we already have, and the new obligations that will come and will be developed. It should be ethically aligned, and it should be socio-technically robust. So it should be both in a technical manner robust, but also take care or take note of the societal impact of these systems. And then we went one step deeper, and we looked at 4 ethical principles that we thought that are important for the development of artificial intelligence. And these were respect for human autonomy, prevention of harm, fairness, and transparency. Well, that is still a bit high over and not very practical. So what we then did is we developed 7 requirements at a more granular level for trustworthy AI. And you saw those requirements in the breakout sessions. I think it's session 1, where you are going to talk about these requirements some more. And these requirements are human autonomy and oversight. So all AI humans should have an oversight over artificial intelligence at all times, privacy and data governance, diversity, of course, non-discrimination and fairness, that is number 3, so it should not be biased, technically robust and safe, it should work, it should do what it promises to do. It should be transparent, and that transparency, I want to say something about that. Transparency has 2 elements. So the first element is that it should be able to explain why an AI system took a certain decision, but you should also be obligated as a company or organization to be transparent about the fact that you are using artificial intelligence. Then we have number 6, social and environmental well-being, and number 7 is accountability. And these are all these 7 requirements followed from the lenses that I just discussed that we used to look at artificial intelligence and develop these guidelines. You already heard Maikki tell you that the European Commission is working on legislation for AI, and we are all very much looking forward to the content of that. And I would also like to let you know that the European Parliament last week proposed an EU regulation that would in fact codify the 7 requirements for trustworthy AI of the high-level expert group into law. If there's one thing that I would like you to remember from this speech, is that I coined a term a couple of years ago, and I would want you to remember that, and that is human in command. This technology does not overcome us. This technology can help us, but we are not a slave to it. We can stay in command of the technology itself, but also of the decision whether we want to use it, under what circumstances, and under what rules. Human in command. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, and very good bridge to the operationalization and deep dive discussion that we will have in the 4 breakouts that I would ask now the ITU to create. You will see them appearing on the top bar. That's where you can go right away. There will be experts, public organizations, industries, experts waiting for you. And we plan a Q&A session at the end of these sessions. Additionally, also, we keep all that question that we see here, and we will address, if the speakers, of course, also are available for that, them offline in order to create a report out, because they are very complex questions as well, and we would like to provide here also a very informed answer. Thanks a lot for the introduction, speakers. It was a pleasure. And yeah, feel free now to choose one of the breakout rooms. Human agency and oversight, data privacy and AI, accountability in AI, and non-discrimination and fairness in AI. Merci.